Hey, this is Jonathan from the PyCalendar team, and in this video, I'm extremely excited to introduce our brand new block. Now, when you're working in PyCalendar, you're no longer required to use the shortcode to add your calendar and configure all the options whenever your site is using the block editor. As you can see on your screen here, I'm on the front end of my website. This is just the events page on my sample site, and I have a couple of events set up here. This is picking up the theme styles from my current theme, and it just has all the normal options. But if I want to configure this a bit, I certainly can. Now, when we go into the back end of the site, instead of dropping in the shortcode, if we add a block and we just search for PyCalendar, or in our case here, it's at the top of the list, I'll just type in PyCalendar, you can see we have the main PyCalendar block here available to you. And this looks in the back end nearly identical to how it will on the front end. With the block selected, you can see we have all the options that existed in the shortcode here available to you on the block. So you can limit the types of posts that show up. So if your site has multiple different post types configured as PyCalendar events, you can limit those here. So for example, if we only wanted posts to show up and not pages or anything else, we can just type in the name of the post type, click on post, and what we're going to see disappear here is the open office hours, because that's actually a page on our website. We'll just click on post and we can see that that's filtered out and removed in the block editor preview. And that's exactly what will happen on the front end. Now, of course, you can add as many different post types in here as you want, so you have the same level of flexibility. If we have multiple different post types and you want to show two, we can add them just like that. Now, in our case, we want to show all the posts, so we'll just simply remove those there. Then you can configure the default view when the calendar loads. And if you go ahead and switch between them, we'll see them change as we click through. All the time grids, the week list, and so on. Then for the theme, you can either set that to default, or if your site is dark mode, you can switch it to dark. Of course, in our case, our theme is a light mode, so we don't want to set that. Or you can set adaptive if your site has the ability to automatically adapt to the user's browser. In cases where your calendar is set to the default or the month classic view, you also have the option to wrap titles. So all the text in a given calendar cell will fit rather than collapsing and kind of bleeding off the edge. We have the locale parameter. So if you want to go ahead and set the default language that will appear, perhaps that's different from your website language, which is also inherited automatically. You have the flexibility to do that. So for example, we could switch this to Danish and we'll see the various options here change to the Danish and EU format. I'll go ahead and just switch mine back to the default browser language for now. In the pro version of PyCalendar, we're going to have a few different options here. For example, this hide time zone box simply will hide the display of this time zone here down at the bottom of our footer. So if we go ahead and enable this, save, and then refresh on the front end, we can see that that message is now gone. Now, connected to that is this option here that says disable adaptive time zone. So my website was set to America, Chicago, and I happen to also be in that time zone. But if your visitor comes and perhaps they're in a totally different time zone like London or somewhere in California, for example, they're going to see those events automatically adapted to their local time zone. If for whatever reason you don't want that to happen, then you can just simply enable this option to disable automatic time zones. We also have the taxonomy filters available to you here. So if you're using things like categories and tags to filter your calendars depending on where they are on your site, that you can just type in right here. And then under advanced, there's one more option for disabling the automatic end dates. And one more option is the show featured image. If we enable this, it will make the featured image of that post appear in the popover on the front end. Now note that the popover doesn't load in the back end because that would just be confusing and difficult UX. So we will just save this. Go take a look on the front end. We can just click on this, unlock the secrets of SEO success, and we can see that image appears there just fine. Then the other thing I want to show you is we also have the PyCalendar info block as well. So if we view this post and let's just edit this, we also can go ahead and drop in the other PyCalendar block you probably noticed, which is the event info block. Now this one is what you use on single posts to display the PyCalendar info for that given event. So you can see the settings here, make it start on April 28th and end on the 29th. And this is the default configuration for the info block. It's going to include the event's time zone and in the pro version, the add to calendar links as well. So let's just say, for example, we only want to show the start and the end time. We can just set those two options, and those are the only two things that will show up. We can also use multiple iterations of this event info block. So if you need to place this in different areas around your site, or if you're using this in a template and want them in two different areas, I could just duplicate this block. On the second one, I'll just switch this to end time, and we can see now that we have those two PyCalendar info blocks, one showing start, one showing end, or you could even combine any combinations. So you can just put those things exactly where you need them, giving you lots of flexibility. You also have the option to change the format here. So there's a number of different options that are going to be really helpful depending on where you are in the world or what your preference is on the month, day, year, year, month, day, 12-hour, 24-hour formats, and those are all here, or you can type in your own. When we switch to something like a 24-hour format, you can see it's going to pop in that PHP format for us, and that change is reflected here in the block editor for us. Scrolling down, we have a couple more options. So if we want to change the text that appears in front of the actual date and time here, this starts on and ends on, we can change those here. For example, here in start text, we could say event starts on. And there we go, that change is reflected there in the block editor. Or if we want to hide that prepend text just all the time, we have this hide prepend text there. And in our case, since we're using two different blocks, we'd want to just do that to both of them. And of course, I did turn on the time zone here, but if you're just using one block, you can go ahead and hide the time zone, and that makes that go away as well. So with that, we're extremely excited to bring you these two blocks. We hope you love them. And if you have any questions, comment below or visit pycalendar.com to learn more. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in a future video.